And welcome back to part 2 of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where today we'll be covering Oil Ocean Zone and probably Metropolis Zone. And that's probably about as far as I'll go, just because Metropolis is quite a lengthy zone. Even though I took over like 6 or 7 zones last time, we're only going to be doing 2 today just because Metropolis is a very long zone. And it's the only zone that's 3 acts in this game. And they balance it out by having the next 2 zones be 1 act as well to kind of make up for it. Even if you really want to be particular, the 2 1-act zones, they might as well be Act 1 and Act 2 of its own beast. Both of them are flying through the sky, the zones. But we'll get to that probably next time. So you might be able to hear that somehow, for the 3rd time this year, I have become unwell. I don't know what happened to my immune system, but it's destroying me. When you think last year, the only time I can think on top of my head that I was even remotely unwell was when I was recording episode Prompto. And even then, I think that was the only occurrence where I was actually unwell. And in this, it's literally the 3rd time. I was ill at the start of the year, I was ill at the end of January, and now I've got whatever I've got from this from probably my mother dearest. As in, she seemed to have caught something over the past week or so, and now I've got a banging headache and my throat's sore as hell. But we got to press on. I decided I wanted to do it, and so I'm doing it. I just don't be surprised if after this upload time I'm in bed. Oh, Tails just got launched. To be fair, if you're like good, well, it's not really. Oh fuck! All right, that usually doesn't happen. I was saying, if you're good with your positioning and you hold down the jump button so you can get maximum height out of a bandit bounce, you can go completely over the roof of that obstacle, which I just did. But you know, it kind of just flung me back without mercy. Because that is something worth mentioning. In all the classic Sonics, bandit bounces exist, and the way it works is if you hold down the jump button when you hit an enemy, you will launch as high as whatever height you just came from. So if you drop down from 10 feet whilst holding jump, you'll bounce up 10 feet when you bounce with the enemy, and you can use it to your advantage to get to a lot of places you're not supposed to, either earlier or just through abuse of the system. And it's also great for speedrunning if you know when to use it. But it is a fun thing, and I like doing it more in Sonic 3, just because of how much more explorative it is. You can sometimes just get to a lot of little spots you probably wasn't intended to go to. Anyway, that was Act 1. You see how much longer of a zone that was? 2.5 minutes, compared to some of what we've gone through. You think Aquatic Ruin, both acts were under a minute. Emerald Hill, both acts under a minute. Chemical Plant, I think, like, they were very short as well. Then I find it weird because, like, in Sonic 2, Oil Ocean was always just a zone I forgot about. Like, I don't think anything of this level. I don't think it's anything special at all in Sonic 2. And yet it's one of my favourite levels in Mania. Like, the way Christian Whitehead reworked this in Mania is just a charm. It's a work of his talent in itself that he managed to make it so enjoyable. And that's not to say that this isn't enjoyable. I just find it very much a non-entity. Thanks, Motorbike. I just find it very much a non-entity. Like, it doesn't stick out in my memory ever. If I go through all the zones in the game, I'll stop at Mystic Cave and then go Metropolis and, oh, hang on a minute, there was Oil Ocean as well. I think what also doesn't help it is that it's between 2 zones that are infamous for getting people killed. Because Mystic Cave, I didn't mention it because I didn't go anywhere near it, but in the original release of Mystic Cave and every other release afterwards except the Christian Whitehead version, if you take the bottom path in Act 2, there's a bunch of pits that when you fall down them, you fall down a great height, there's no way of getting out, and there's just spikes at the bottom. Even Supersonic, which is the invincibility mode you get for getting all the Chaos Emeralds, can't do anything. You'll just burn out of time, and eventually the spikes will kill you, because there's no spring back up, there's no safety, you just fall down a height you physically can't escape from, and that's it. And then Metropolis Zone, coming afterwards, is 3 acts of torture. It's this game's equivalent of Scrap Brain, just on crack. And it's 3 enemy types that are spawned around. Only 3 enemy types, you might not think it's that much, but all 3 of them are infamous for being absolute bastards. Oh, I've already lost all my rings, so I've got to try and do this perfect now. Seriously, whether it's the... I forget the name of the star enemies, but I know the other ones is Shellcrackers and Slicers. But all 3 of them are just a pain in the... Asterons, that's the star one's called. Asterons, Shellcrackers and Slicers. The slicers are the absolute bane of most players' experiences. The positioning they put most slicers is in a position where you're guaranteed to get hit by them. Like, you'll launch with a spring into their path. You'll run down a path with no reason to expect them to be there, and they'll just show up. Like, they're mean and brutal. And we're gonna go there next, so that's great. Shellcrackers are annoying because they're big. They have a big, because they're like a crab enemy, and they have a big claw, and that big claw, it's very indecisive of when it counts as a hurt box and when it doesn't. And so a lot of times you'll try and hit the Shellcracker and you'll just take damage and you'll be like, what? Huh? Why? But here we go. Here goes Metropolis. And for the sake of not dying, I'll probably take this kind of slow. That's an Asteron. As my throat just died. The Asterons are probably the weakest threat of the lot. You just gotta pay attention to their star shape, because that tells you where their projectiles are gonna go. That's the Shellcracker, and that time I got lucky. Oh, that's the Crushers. Then all that's left is the green son of a bitch known as the Slicer, otherwise known as the worst enemy in Sonic. Actually, if I took that upper path back there, I probably would have gone straight headfirst into one. If I can avoid the Slicers a lot, I will. Oh, nothing here. Okay, we've got to go the other way. Also, I hesitate to say it's a maze. Ooh. But it is. Like, there is a lot of multiple paths, and some of those paths will lead to dead end. Like, it's not completely a maze. Like, you're not gonna get stuck or lost, I don't think. But you are gonna find yourself waddling down a dead end relatively often. Unless you've done it like a million times, and then you'll probably only bump into one or two. These Asterons are incredibly picky as to when they want to like work and when they don't want to activate. So if they don't activate, don't question it, just keep on moving. But all the ones on the bolts seem very inconsistent as to when they activate and when they don't. The biggest hurdle is that because you have Tails with you, Tails can get close enough to trigger the Asterons as well. And I doubt I need to say how frustrating that can be if it's not your fault and then you're getting like bitch slapped by an Asteron. I'm very concerned we haven't bumped into a single Slicer yet. Like, I know it's happening. Where are they? I know they're around. I'm surprised I'm getting this lucky. Because I know there is a path, at least in Act 1, where you can completely avoid any and all encounters with Slicers, but that's only Act 1. Oh, whoops. Make sure you jump that, and oh, we managed to get through the whole of Act 1 without a single Slicer. I am not complaining about that. Slicers are the bane of most people's existence. They're really not fun enemies to deal with, because they always just find a way to hit you. The only saving grace is that if they somehow miss their attack, they're a sitting duck. There's nothing they can do. They changed this in Sonic 4 by making it so they self-destruct after they throw their Slicers. Ooh. How? Okay, usually I get hit by that one. It's like that. Oh, fuck! There he is! There he is! What was I supposed to do there? Oh, and there's another one. So if you get launched either way, you're going face first into a Slicer. I knew I wasn't going to escape him for much longer. The fuckers. Ugh. I say that, but I don't... I hate the Slicers, but at the same time I don't... Like, there's such a... Like, I just have to laugh every time I bump into one, because I'm like, oh, you prick. Because their positioning is always in the perfect place to screw you over as heavily as possible. And it reminds me of what they eventually came to do in Sonic Advance 3. Advance 3 has a bit of a hard-on for putting enemies in the way of you. And I don't mind it too much. It's only when it goes a bit overkill in some of the last zones that it gets a bit like ugh. But even then, like the last zone, Chaos Angel, if you're trying to take it fast, you're doing it wrong. It's a platform heavy zone, and one that earns its right to be a platform heavy zone in the Sonic game harder than almost any other zone in the series. At least the music's good for Metropolis. But see, I think it's like Zone 5 onwards. I say even that, Zone 3's a bastard. Not just because of enemy placements, but just how the level design is set up. It's very cruel. Zone 3 is oh, did you see how dickish of a placement that slicer is? Like, what? Come on. I was down there an extra life. But Zone 3 is like the other oil-based zone in the series, which I think it's ocean-based actually, but it's got like an oil theming to it in places as well. And I actually enjoy that zone. It's just Act 1 can rot in hell. Act 1 is a surprisingly heavy difficulty spike for kids and adults alike. It really catches people off guard how much more difficult Act 1 of Ocean Base is compared to anything else that in Ocean Base Zone. Then after that you had Toy Kingdom, which I love Toy Kingdom, but I hate the boss. The boss at the end of Toy Kingdom is such a pain in the backside. It's so difficult, at least in my opinion. I don't think it's the worst boss ever that a lot of people throw at it. It's definitely a brutal boss, and it's definitely questionably fair, because the way the boss works is that you're pushing him off an edge, but he's always constantly pushing back, and what attacks he does depends on how you can counter it. Like, some attacks you just can't counter, some attacks you can counter several times kind of thing, and every time you hit him it just pushes him back a bit. Fucking you know what I mean? Like, you try and take it fast and the slices just ruin your day. I'm taking the lower path, screw it. But then after that, let's see, at Ice Paradise, which Act 2 and the boss were both brutal. Like Act 2 is brutal just because of the water section and the amount of enemies you fight near the end. And then the boss is probably one of the only bosses in 2D Sonic games that I straight up don't like. It's really, really bastardly programmed, and there's way too many luck factors involved with it, and it's extremely difficult. You really much are. Unless you're playing with like Tails to try and fly up above it, you're really gonna have a bad time trying to deal with it normally, because it's basically you have to drop platforms on the boss that's below you that's constantly swiveling left and right, so you have to actually time the dropping of the platforms. However, next to the boss is floating above a bottomless pit, and if at any point either one of the attacks it launches you hits you, or you just slightly miss a jump, or the platform drops a little too soon for you were ready for, it's just the end of a life. You don't get another fuck you, Shellcracker. You don't get a recovery period. You don't just take damage. No, it's just a bottomless pit underneath the entire boss, and you just die. And you can't hit the boss, like, because it's, for some reason, it's the only boss in the series that hitting the Eggman's glass unit just hurts you. And they do something similar with the 6th boss, where it's launching cannons at you and you have to deflect the cannonballs. But that one I actually really enjoy for what it is. I don't think it's as brutal and as bad as people make it out to be. I don't mind the fact that all the bosses tried something different and was a little bit gimmicky, because it wasn't CD's overkill. They were just experimenting and doing something a little different, instead of just being drastically different beasts that are time wasters. Because with the exception of the Zone 5's boss. So in Chaos Danger, all 3 acts are brutal. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of Act 3, because I like Act 1 and 2 because they make sense to like be a difficult level that you can kind of do fast if you know exactly what you're doing, but for the most part you're taking it very slow. But then Act 3 is you're stuck on a platform for most of the level. Yeah, there's a few secret paths that are off screen that if you somehow just know about, you can jump to and get to them, that speed up the process a little bit, but all in all you're kind of stuck on that platform. Especially when there's a lot of sections where it has to go straight up. Like, there's no way you're getting up that high with just Tails or Cream. It's just not happening. Especially Cream, because her flight ability is non-existent. But then people play... That's not the reason people play as Cream. They play as Cream because she's broken as shit. Anyway, go to the boss. This boss... it can be intimidating, so you got to line up when to hit it, but if you just position yourself, you really shouldn't have anything to worry about. Like, if you just have a bit of patience and wait for it to come down, you should be fine. As my throat goes again. See, look, Tails is getting here every time, because Tails is a numbnuts. But you can see, like, if you can see, like, it works, like it's got like in a circular pattern. So if you just follow the circular pattern, it's very easy to just thread the needle and hit him every time. Once you get rid of all the little ball, only one more hit and he's done. And I'm going to call that a part and hope that I recover a bit better for tomorrow. So next time on Sonic 3, we'll wrap up the game because there's really not that much left. But until then, you guys take care now.